Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, Empowering People, Enabling Business. I am your host, Red. Yes, that's the color red. I'm currently a verification analyst in a partnership between Genashtim and B Lab. And right now, today, our topic is going to be all about ESG and sustainability. These are now like pretty exciting buzzwords in the world of business, but what are these buzzwords anyway? So I have here a special guest today, a friend and colleague, and the section manager of the ESG department of Genashtim, Beng Tan. Hi, Beng. What's up?
Hey Ren, what's up?
Right. It's great having you here. Thank you so much for your time today. So, before we dive into ESG, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you, good sir?
Yeah, thanks so much, Red. And of course, I'm very happy to be here today to share a little bit more on some of the humble knowledge that I have on ESG. Well, I'm Ibeng. I actually head of the ESG services department in Genashtim. Well, we come to ESG, sometimes people will get a little bit complicated, on how ESG is being defined. But coming back to the most simplest thing, I will put it into just the three main pillars, which is the environment, the social, the governance. Well, environment can be something like how much your carbon emission looks like, how much water you are using, how you treat your waste, how you treat the toxic material released, especially if you are in a manufacturing line. So that is on the environment. So on social part, we talk about people. We talk about our employees, well-being. We talk about suppliers. We talk about charity program. We talk about how we actually help the people. Of course, the governance part is the one that is most alien to everybody. So when it comes to governance, people will be like, what's that, right? But essentially, governance is talking about how companies are running. So this could be how the policies is being structured. Do they have like a vision or code of conduct and so on and so forth? But Red, there is a lot of time people will ask me something like, is CSR similar to ESG? I'm not sure if in your line they ask you this question. If let's say I would like to give a simple response to that, I would think that CSR is part of ESG because CSR is more like, in my own understanding, is dealing with the external. For example, if you run charity, you are raising fund for a certain NGO or non-profit out there, or you are helping to clean the environment, for example, cleaning the rivers, cleaning the sea, and so on and so forth. It's more of an external thing. But ESG could cover inside, outside, the entire spectrum of your organization's operation. Yeah.
Mm-mm. So basically, ESG is the umbrella term, and CSR will come under it, whether it's under the environment or the social. Pretty much because in your explanation, it's more external. CSR
Mm.
is more towards external stakeholders, or that it can be either structured or an ad hoc type thing, right?
Yeah, correct, exactly.
Oh, cool. So there is a bit of a confusion in those two terms. So thank you so much for clearing that up, Eving. So I want to ask more about your journey in Genashtim and in starting the ESG department. So what did you think about it at first? Were you nervous? Like what was your journey towards creating the department?
Yeah. I think when recall back, it is not long time ago, the ESG department is only established in December 2020.
Yeah.
And it is relatively new considering that Genashtim was founded in 2008. But I do think ESG has been part of us all this while. So when our founder, Thomas Ng, started Genashtim, it was really to provide job opportunities for the disadvantaged. So one of the ways to solve the issue of those who are in this community, particularly the PWDs, someone who are on wheelchair, someone who are bedbound, or someone who are visually impaired. So it's a little bit difficult for them to travel, and there is a lot of resources like time, money wasted, right? So one of the way to really make sure that they can work their best is to implement working from home. And during that time, that is really our purpose, is just really to create an environment where our workers can work from home. And hence we started 100% operation since then. Now, it's nothing fancy like we want to be futuristic, whatever. It's really purely to help these people. But this in turn translate to us being, embedded the ESG elements into how our organization operates. So that is where we started building the organization. Not just that we help the marginalized community, but through virtual operations, we actually reduce carbon. We cut down a lot of unnecessary transport, which release a lot of carbon emission and so on.
Mm-mm.
And later on, we started diving a little bit more into the business of ESG. We offer workshops and trainings. We offer membership accreditation, professor service, and so on and so forth, which all of these are detailed in our ESG services website. But one thing that I wish to mention a bit more is that we have been collaborating with various organizations. Well, one of it that particularly we want to mention is actually B Lab, the non-profit behind the B Corp certification. So we actually source independent verification analysts to B Lab. And later on, this independent verification analyst helps to actually audit the companies who are submitted to be processed as a B Corp. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's kind of actually poetic, right? To think that the company has been formed at the conception, rather, of the company is the ESG is already embedded in the company prior to even like creating the department, prior to even creating ESG related revenue streams.
correct,
Wow.
correct. I really think that our founder Thomas may not be even realized back then. I think his purpose is really to help people. But ultimately, I think it relates to one of the quote that he always shared. Good business is actually a business for good.
Mm.
Or I think maybe the other way around. Yes.
Yeah, this is pretty much our motto now. Business, we are businesses for good. So yeah, basically, you were part of the pioneering members of the ESG department. So what was
Yes.
it like when it just started? Like, did you know what you were doing back then, even?
That's a very good question. So, well, just to share with our audience here, I'm actually born partially blind and I can only see less than 20%. And obviously, my field back in the university was really on public relations. So I learned about how to write press release, feature articles, and so on and so forth. Got nothing to do with ESG. But I think the only skills that I could actually apply here is that public relation deals with reputation management. And if your organization is actually embedding ESG, is in a way helping your organization to strengthen its reputation, right? So I have to say that I know very little about ESG. I only know pretty much the UN SDG goals, which is actually the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set by United Nations to advance the global agenda to actually meet the 17 goals in order for our planet to be sustainable for our future generation. So I think it's a learning curve for me. Definitely, I look through a lot of resources, and I think this experience actually let me know a lot of things about Genashtim because partly we look at our talent and regardless of what condition you are in. So we really look at the talent and we invest in them. And subsequently, we train those who have potential to assume a role that maybe they don't have an experience, but they have the heart. We will actually put them through. And I think that is actually one of the spirit that I like about Genashtim, and I really hope this can be replicated in another organization as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, speaking of replicating ESG
Mm.
to other businesses, like how would they start? I mean, it can be overwhelming, of course, to start an entirely new framework that might be even foreign to a
Mm.
lot of businesses, even though they want to start doing something good. So,
Yeah.
how do we encourage businesses of every size from every location to actually start their ESG framework?
Yeah. Whenever people come to ask me this type of question, they will always throw out what we call the ESG alphabet soup, the soup that will cause you drunk. So basically, this alphabet soup is a series of acronym that you will hear out there when people will just throw this around like a jargon, like for example, GRI, SSB, MSCI, Dow Jones Sustainability, yada yada yada. So many of them. So you really will get confused and drunk. But I think I think if really want to keep it very simple, there are existing tools out there to help companies to really look at where to start. And one of the often question that I got from the clients is that we know nothing about ESG. Do you have any guidance? Do you have any resources that we need to refer to? So on and so forth. Right. So I would usually recommend them to look out the impact assessment tool. Yeah, which I think you are the experts here. Yeah. So they will ask about how to get started, and I will advise them to try out the tool and start to populating their company's information into that tool.
Mm.
So for the clients who come back to me, obviously I will recommend the impact assessment tool. So personally, I do think this is the best tool to get started because it is very simple to use. I think, Red, you are the expert here. Perhaps maybe I will just hear some from you then, how that tool could help and how company could actually look at their progress very clearly, how they know that they are improving and so on and so forth.
Yeah, sure. Okay, guys, it's my time to shine. All right. Okay, I wouldn't go so far as to call myself a professional on this, though the BIA has been like my bread and butter for like past almost a year now, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, the BIA is a platform. It is like a very long quiz. I don't know if you guys go to Disney Channel when you were kids and go to those personality quizzes type of characters. Anyway, but the BIA is a platform where you're going to be answering a lot of items that have everything and anything to do with how your business is being conducted. So the first step, of course, is just putting in information about your company, like, of course, your company structure, how you generate your revenue, how many people are in your company, where are you located. So those basic stuff. And then once you dive deeper into the BIA, the questions get a little more up close and personal um, by checking in how you conduct your business, what is your business model. So it's going to be like divided even into impact areas such as governance, in terms of workers, the community. So an example here would be, let's say for governance, they're going to check if you have a whistleblower policy, you have a
Yeah.
code of conduct in there. So for workers, another example would be, oh, is there healthcare coverage? Are there supplementary benefits for your employees? And then there are more technical aspects of it that I won't dive into anymore because it's going to be quite a handful. But
Yeah.
let's just say that it is rigorous enough to investigate a lot of what's going on in your company. And of course, the BIA isn't the entire certification process to becoming a B Corp isn't an easy one that it's just because you answered the series of questions, you're gonna go and get the certification. There is a process where you're gonna have an up close and personal heart to heart session with a verification analyst, and they're gonna ask for documentations. Of course, they're gonna be assessing the veracity of this documentation, of how accurate these are in terms of how you conduct your business. And then only then you get B Corp certification, which is basically an announcement to the entire world, into the world of business, of course, that we are a good business. In terms of ESG, in terms of sustainability, we are pretty good. We take care of the environment, we take care of our workers. We are very conscious about our external stakeholders, whether these be our suppliers or our customers. So it is a trophy. We can say that it is a trophy, a very well earned trophy, indeed.
Exactly. I think I can testify for that because whenever we do a recertification for Genashtim as a B Corp, so we have to go through that painful process. But I think it's rewarding. It's very rewarding.
It
But I
is
think
rewarding.
Yeah, but one thing that I wish to highlight here is that, perhaps not all companies would like to become a B Corp. And that is where the good news is, in a way that the B Impact Assessment tool is offered for free for everybody to use. So anyone can actually come in, create an account, start putting in their organization's information. I think that can be completed within an hour. And you can actually see a baseline, like what are you scoring at the moment. They also generate some sort of like a benchmark report to compare how the other businesses are actually doing with a similar context like us. So for instance, if we create a B impact assessment for a furniture company, so you could actually see that what is the benchmark score for a typical furniture company that is of your size, your region, and also operating in kind of like a similar industry that you are in at the moment. And the points would actually helps you to know that where you are now, and that actually helps you to improve a bit more later. Yeah. So I think that is still the simplest tool because it covers a wide spectrum. It really covers your entire company's operation, like you said just now. And if let's say maybe the B impact tools is a bit alien and is something like related to B Corp, B Lab and United Nations Global Compact, which is two of the leading organizations in the sustainability area around the globe for companies. They actually produce another tool called the SDG Action Manager, right? So the SDG Action Manager is actually based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals created in 2015. Right, so this goal actually sometimes we will look at in the TV, people will say that, oh, we are some organizations said I'm subscribed to goal number 1, number 3, number 4, so on and so forth, right? So this tool will actually help them to benchmark and prepare them to get started. If let's say my company would like to commit to maybe goal number 1, zero poverty, right? So then this tool can actually score, how much have I done in meeting the goal of zero poverty and how much is left on the table. And then this tool will actually help to guide us where you should go and how you should pursue. And one best thing about it is it will help you to identify the low-hanging fruit. Some of the things are easy to implement compared to the others. So I would say it's a perfect tool. Yeah. But I think I
think a roadmap, right? A roadmap.
Yeah,
pretty much.
correct. Pretty much it's a very comprehensive roadmap. It covers everything. And that actually brings me to different areas. I've heard a lot of companies tell me that, well, if your organization is big, it's easier for you to become an ESG conscious. You are practicing ESG. We don't have the resource. We are small and all that. But for you, Red, what is your experience with those? Do all the organizations that you verify are all big organizations?
I don't know, dude, because the thing is, at least I'm no business owner, so this is just from an external point of view. But I would have the impression that smaller companies would find it easier actually to be more compliant in terms of not compliant, but it's more achievable for them to be sustainable or be conscious towards the ESG movement. Because let's say you have like 10 staff, you have like 10 people you got to take care of. It's not like anything. I don't mean to sound cynical, by the way. This is like from my point of view, I welcome being corrected here, but I would see it as a way that my company is small. It is a lot more manageable than having to handle 10 different branches located in 10 different cities. How would I know if my workers in, let's say in Laguna are being treated fairly by their managers as compared to, the current staff that I have right now in Manila? I treat them well. What about my people over there? Do they have an actual working environmental management system in the province as compared to what I have here in Manila? So I would think that from an external point of view, that a smaller business would be easier to manage in terms of achieving ESG. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity yet to verify or work with larger companies. But also in terms of like the verification process itself, the verification process is much longer when it comes to the larger enterprises as compared to the smaller ones, because you get like this, you ask for documentation. It's not that hard for them to provide documentation that is for one location. And then if it's a larger business, you need to ask for documentation regarding their other locations. So just from my point of view, and yet again, I'm not saying I'm a pro, and I'm saying that I am welcome to be corrected. I can see that it's much more achievable for small businesses. Yeah, which kind of like makes me more of an advocate for smaller businesses, especially in emerging markets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that is true, right? In fact, if we look across those companies who got certified as a B Corp, quite a big majority of it is from the SME department, the small medium enterprise, the micro enterprise, and so on. These are companies that has a revenue that is below 10 million. Yeah.
It's
But I
easier for them because I guess more manageable, I guess.
Yeah, I have to agree. But on the other hand, I do also heard some company owners say something like being sustainable is expensive. We need to change a lot of things. We need to put up solar panel, which is expensive. We need to reinvest in different kind of technologies, which is expensive. And the list goes on, So they will say that these are something that we can't afford. But I think there is a lot of ways to look at it. And sometimes to turn the company to be sustainable doesn't necessarily has to start from a very big step. So I do think that we could start small, really looking at how to treat. If we don't want to invest in equipment, perhaps we can start with certain policies to take care of the well-being of our people. It could be as simple as coming out with the policies that starting to recycle papers, reducing the usage of electricity. For example, like if you're not using the office, close the light. If you're not using the air conditioner, you can close it down. And if it's not necessary, please don't use it. Maybe some even more simple thing like you create some sort of like a brown bag survey, yeah, or maybe in company annual event, engage with employees and ask how they are doing. Are they happy in the company? How we can actually make the company well? What do they think about their purpose in the organization? These may look like simple questions and maybe not related to like how my company perform financially and all that, but it actually helps to really look at why your employee work in the organization in the first place. Recently, we have a lot of these buzzwords. For example, like one of these words is they call it the Great Resignation. So when I heard it, it was like, wow, Great Resignation, what's that? So everybody resigned. So basically, this phenomenon is actually happening during the COVID season.
Yeah.
During the COVID, I think suddenly people become a little bit zen. They question life. They ask like, why am I here? What is my purpose and all that. I think people start to realize that there is some purpose beyond just going to work and then earn a salary and then come back. Like yourself, you are a young, very energetic and very talented people. So what makes you join a purpose-driven organization like Genashtim?
Yes, that's the thing though. So like you mentioned earlier, right? A lot of companies are a bit apprehensive with pursuing ESG and sustainability efforts because they think it's costly.
Mm.
The misconception here is that it is costly, but the thing is, after various studies and researches, it's actually a lot more cost effective for companies to work towards sustainability, to work towards ESG. So for example, it's kind of like this great resignation phenomenon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
People started realizing their worth as a worker, as individuals, when their companies are forcing them to come into work without any measures to safeguard their health during the pandemic.
Right.
So people started resigning, people started looking for different work. So that would definitely cost the companies. They're losing money because they lost their workers.
Oh yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, so instead of them thinking of a way of how do we make this sustainable? How do we make our work just generally good for their own employees so we can make work from home arrangements,
Yeah.
right? So there's that. That's one example. Another example here is that earlier during our discussion, you were talking about talent and how Genashtim has leveraged that talent by providing this innovative working condition, which is basically work from home. So during the pandemic, aside from the great resignation, a lot of people are, of course, laid off. So there's that one phenomenon. And another phenomenon that happened here was that businesses pivoted into a work from home arrangements. So let's say those call centers, they decided, okay, we can let them have the laptops for the months. We'll just make sure that everything is monitored online and stuff like that. So businesses did actually pivot to have this work from home setup, where in fact, prior to the pandemic, there was barely any word on work from home unless you're a vlogger or some freelancer.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
the pain point here is that prior to the pandemic, people with disabilities, people who are mobility impaired would apply for jobs, ask for a work from home arrangement, and not get the job because the company doesn't provide that kind of arrangement. And now all of a sudden, when the world slightly ended, the business world decided that they can pivot into a work from home setup,
Yeah.
which is a lot more costly than having to provide one work from home setup for one individual with disability. Can you like think of the irony in all of that? So that is also like talent wasted. That is money wasted. It is actually a lot more cost effective to work toward ESG, to work towards sustainability, than to think that no, solar panels are costly. You spend $200 on a solar panel, and then for the next few months, basically your energy bill is going to be free and you get an ROI in like what, 2 years?
Mhm.
So that's After 2 years, what are you paying for? There's no more energy bill because everything is done. You had a net metering with a solar panel. So that is like one of those misconceptions of ESG that sure, there are tiny little sacrifices, tiny more efforts to be made towards ESG, but the rewards of it, I think they're definitely worth it for the talent, for just being environmentally aware of things. I think the tiny effort and the tiny cost that comes with it, eventually it'll pay off.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I keep thinking from the other angle, like if let's say I'm a client, when I want to buy something for myself and for my families and all that, this ESG thing sometimes will pop in. For instance, I would actually prefer some product that actually treat the world well, and maybe how their product is being packaged, reducing the single-use plastic and so on and so forth. I'm actually a little bit conscious here on the product. So like for myself, I would definitely choose products that is more friendly to the environment and also the companies that treat good. And I don't think I want to purchase clothes that use a false label that they have to work 12 hours a day. Maybe not 12 hours a day, maybe 25 hours a day.
I think I know that clothing brand, right? I think you do too. I think in the back of your head you do too.
Yeah, yeah. But this type of thing, you make a lot of customers feel good when they can actually choose from a brand that really helps not just the community and the environment. While maybe companies may think that this will increase their cost in terms of material and how they source it. But I think in the long run, people do like it. And it's not just me saying here, but rather there is a lot of evidence, literature that has supported this. So if you go online and you type, especially among the millennials and Gen Z or Gen Y like us, so there will be a lot of this research saying that how we are actually preferring this kind of product. And bear in mind, we are actually growing and our purchase power is increasing. So if let's say we are starting a business that really catered and committed towards sustainability, it will actually build the company's reputation and subsequently attract people to come in.
Exactly, because that's another facet of how companies that pursue sustainability and ESG actually become more profitable. So we talked about this like way, way back, even before this podcast. There was this fast food chain, I'm not going to name which one it was, that had a lot of labor issues.
Yeah.
So bad that it became like really big news in the country. So what happened was I was still a college student by then. So it was a nationwide boycott on said fast food chain. So every branch was essentially empty and pretty much their stocks went plummeting down. That was because their labor, I won't even say labor rights because they basically didn't give the workers any rights at that point. And there was like a huge, huge boycott. So yeah, they lost money for it. Where in fact, if they had just given the workers the rights that they deserved, the salary that they deserved, the treatment that they deserved, they wouldn't have to go through that. People would still have their chicken. So like, so yeah, it just goes to show, and it does prove that companies that are working towards ESG, that are working towards sustainability, are in fact better as businesses. And as you said, especially in the younger generation, they would tend to either look at ingredients now. They would look into how they would look into the news of how the companies or whatever product it is that they are patronizing, if they are actually for good. So yeah, the ESG does in fact go a long way in terms of the profitability and the reputation, of course, as you mentioned, of the business.
Yeah. Man, I can definitely feel your anger when you talk about that case. Just hope that you don't burn anything after this.
I have a social scientist background, so y'all know what I'm talking about. In terms of like this entire ESG journey, you already mentioned some personal experiences of how it does affect your everyday life. So how else has there like been a change of perspective ever since you started being more involved in ESG?
Well, to be honest, is not to say to change the perspective, but really to deepen my knowledge in the ESG area and to look at how significant it is. Born, raised up in Malaysia, where ESG is still relatively new. So every time I shared my area of work in ESG, people will be like, huh? What's that? ESG? What's that? Is it like a consultancy program? Is it like a marketing? Yeah, so it's something that people can't grasp it. I still recall there is one time I shared this with my uncle about ESG and the work that I do, and he was asking me that, oh, which NGOs that you are attached with, you know? So I thought this is like some things that NGO will do, right?
Mm,
But in reality, business can be a far superior forces to really make a significant
mm,
change in around the globe. I think joining this job and really dive into the ESG industry, it makes me realize one thing. We can actually harvest the energy of the corporate and also the capitalism. Capitalism doesn't have to be some sort of an evil words associating with people who are very greedy, So you really utilize this capitalism to capitalize the power of the businesses to start doing good. And if all the businesses are working towards this goal on a global level where government plans certain policies to help
mm,
this organization, definitely we could actually bring a lot of this change, not just to the world, but also to how business is essentially run. And I can tell you that this is definitely a very profitable business to go, because in the future, sustainability will be here to stay. And sustainability is the default standards for a good business, right? Even we have compliance and all that. But
mm,
to me, learning about sustainability make me realize that it is important. It is not something that is nice to have, but it's a must to have. And there is a lot of bright opportunities for many organizations around the globe could actually capitalize on this. Just to share some other findings that I got throughout the job that I'm performing, we are really looking at a lot of impact investors looking into channeling their money into these organizations. So we even have the green loan. For example, if let's say you want
mm,
to buy a solar panel, you could actually get something called the green loan, where your interest rate could be depending on the progress of how much you have implemented your green project. And in a way, some of these loans are at a better rate compared to the conventional loan. And also,
mm,
we have a lot of investors who are passionate in this area. They are chasing after all these company and are willing to invest their money and really to help to champion the
mm,
good cause that they are doing. Obviously, compliance, we have more and more now, especially for the larger organizations. There are more laws coming out. There are more compliance coming out, policies as well. And if you are familiar with the mandatory requirement for publicly listed company, especially in Southeast Asia region, there are some mandatory requirement, like you company
mm,
must report their sustainability practices annually, right? So these are some. And as a result, in the future, if we are a company that really don't look at sustainability, we'll be leaving out. People will start to really want to work with those who have sustainability rather than those who are not. Well, coming back, I think I drive a little bit away from the original question that you asked. But yeah, coming back to here, bringing all this realization makes me feel like, I would say, privilege to know something that is so crucial to the current environment, to the current trend in how business is being run. I would say that is a privilege. But what about you? What do you think?
Um, I guess it's actually quite fortuitous that I had been assigned to the ESG department because my background is in social sciences. So basically, I am an advocate of the same thing. But for what it's worth, when the ESG position was offered to me, the first thing I did was actually Google it because I had no idea what it was back then. So there's that. And it does affect me in ways that there are certain terms that I was unfamiliar with, and terms like greenwashing, whitewashing, blue washing.
So many
Those,
colors.
yeah, so many colors,
Yeah.
but those types of terminologies actually made me more aware of like what companies are actually doing this just for their front and
Mhm.
pretty much just doing it for face and not exactly applying it because they're sincere about it. There are a lot of aspects of ESG that does affect my perspective in life. So from the product, I mean, have you seen my Shopee cart? There's like, those shampoo bars, they're a lot more environment friendly. Yeah, they're in there now. So it does affect the way I would perceive my own life and the way I consume things and the way I patronize companies or even restaurants and stuff like that. Anyway, we're about to end the session, but before I do, I just want to ask, what is the best thing about ESG and what are the challenges that, you want to share to our listeners should they decide that they want to kickstart their ESG framework?
Well, I think, in my opinion, if companies would really like to pursue ESG, it's always best to identify the low-hanging fruits. First of all, there are certain things that you can immediately implement without a lot of efforts, right? And slowly from there, we could actually look at what are some of the things that the organization could actually go and dive a bit deeper from there. So, for instance, company could start with just maybe very simple recycling policies, maybe use two sides of paper and so on and so forth. But slowly from there, we can create more policies, or we can create more practices that when the team members get used to it, we can add in slowly, bit by bit. But of course, I would think that learning from other organizations is also good, because different people has different approach how they could save the environment, help the employees, and so on and so forth. And there is no need to be something very big and very fancy and cost you a lot. It can be something very simple, sweet, and you can actually immediately implement into your organization.
Mhm.
But of course, starting is one thing. The next thing is to commit and progress forward. And there is where you need tools to constantly guide you and share with you where is the gap, just like the B Impact Assessment tool created by B
Mhm.
Lab that we have briefly talked about, and also to really have the support of your team members, and especially the management to really pursue, because if one person is passionate and the rest is not, it will be difficult. And of course,
Yeah.
if let's say there are a lot of people are not interested and they thought that this is a good to have thing, there are actually a lot of benefits, and we do offer a course on this. And if let's say any one of our audience here would like to know more, we do offer ESG training courses in another partner organization that we have. Is ESG Business Institute, esg-bi.org. So you can go there, and we have some resources for you to help and to guide you why ESG is actually an element that will help bring profitability to your organization. So yeah, I think that will be the conclusion that I would put here for the podcast.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ibeng, for your time. And I really enjoyed our little session over here. So thank you so much for your time. And everybody,
Likewise.
and everybody here listening, if you're enjoying this podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest episodes. Coming up next on episode 4, we're going to be having a special guest spilling the beans on her journey exploring a different career path and what made her decide to come back to remote work. So stay tuned and catch you next time. Have a great day.